31 today. You can turn there, chapter 31. I know that's the end of Proverbs. So if you're confused about that, let me just remind you that we're going through Proverbs, so we're about halfway through. But if it seemed like we're jumping all over the place over the last few weeks, that's because we are. We're jumping all over the place. This is more of a topical series that we're doing, looking at some of the main topics that Proverbs brings to light for our lives and how Christ gives us wisdom in those ways. And so Proverbs 31 today is going to focus on the wisdom he gives us in marriage. Now, this afternoon I get to participate in a marriage. I get to officiate it. I love that word, officiate. It sounds like I'm the referee between two opponents, but obviously that's not what's happening here. One of the reasons I love being a part of a wedding is that I get like this front row seat to this bride and this groom, and they're celebrating one of the most joyous occasions of their life. Right? That part's great. It's fun to be a part of that. But the reality is there's something way bigger going on than just these two having this wonderful day with their friends and family. And the great reality is that what they're doing, getting married, is part of this massive, eternal purpose of God. A purpose that he set from the very beginning of creation. So when you look back at Genesis 1 and 2, God's creating everything, right? It's all his idea, and it's all good, over and over again. God made it, he did it, and he said it was good, over and over and over again. Until we get to chapter 2, where it says that the man was alone, and God says for the very first time, that's not good. And I find that really fascinating, because in Genesis 2, Adam is in the Garden of Eden in sinless perfection, right? Sin has not ruined the world yet. Adam is in the midst of creation and enjoys unhindered relationship with God apart from sin. How could it get any better? And yet, in that moment, God says, nope, not good. Because even though all of that is true, I'm going to make you a woman. Adam, this is what you need. I'm going to ordain marriage because that is good. How powerful is that? God has done this. It's his perfect work. It fulfills his perfect purpose. And listen, not that all of us need to be married to be in God's purpose. That's not what that means. It's simply showing us that marriage is not something we get to define or do on our own terms. It's always and only on his terms. And beyond that, when we get to the New Testament and after the cross and after the resurrection of Jesus, we remember the words that Terry just read to us a few minutes ago in Ephesians 5. That marriage, that relationship, more than any other relationship in this world, clearly demonstrates the love of Christ for his church. And so marriage carries a lot of weight, doesn't it? A lot of weight. So the wisdom principles we're going to see in Proverbs 31, let me be clear, they do contain wisdom, a truth from God that is for all of us and for any relationship. But marriage actually demands more from us about what this chapter means. And the reason I say that is this. Listen, every relationship in our lives has purpose and meaning, and we're meant to live out that relationship in the wisdom of Christ. But every relationship you have in your life, or almost every relationship you have in your life, is something that you can take or leave. Right? There are some people that you simply don't have to be around. Or you can be around them on your terms in limited ways, and in fact, there are some people you shouldn't even be around. Right? You get what I'm saying about the different relationships in our lives? But marriage is not that, is it? Marriage is the relationship you're in every day, and there is no avoiding it. You're not meant to avoid it. And so you have to live in it every day, and thus the demand for knowing the wisdom of Christ in marriage is just multiplied because of that reality, isn't it? So, Proverbs 31. We're going to spend our time mostly in verses 10 through 31, but I want to set up the context of this whole chapter in verse 1. Proverbs 31:1 says this: the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. I love that Proverbs 31 ends with the words of a woman from God. This is perfect, isn't it? Because all through Proverbs we've seen that Lady Wisdom is calling out to you, and Lady Foolishness is also calling out to you. But wisdom throughout Proverbs is just this lady calling out to us to listen. Listen, heed my voice, follow me, and your life will go well. And so it makes perfect sense that here, to end the Proverbs, Lady Wisdom is speaking to us, literally through a woman. So we have the words of King Lemuel, it says, and we're not exactly sure who that is. Some people think it's Solomon. That's just another name for him because Lemuel is from God. So it's Solomon or some other king. The reality is, it actually doesn't really matter that much, because the words of King Lemuel are the words of his mother. Wisdom from God through that woman passed down to the next generation. What a beautiful picture of Lady Wisdom speaking to us, and specifically through a woman about her perspective on a marriage. So again, the possible applications in our relationships in this chapter are broad. It pertains to all of us. Take note of these things and seek this kind of wisdom in every relationship. But specifically, and most importantly, it's going to address our marriages and how we draw on the wisdom of Christ in those things. So, flip over to verse 10. Let's get into this poem about marriage in chapter 31. An excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels, and the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax, and works with the willing hands. She is like the ships. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable, and her lamp does not go out of order. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor, and reaches out her hand to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Listen to this. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. So let's be clear, this passage is mainly about a wife, but it's going to pertain to both the husband and the wife in marriage. So as we explore this today, we're going to look at marriage as wisdom from God through Christ in our marriage. And the first thing we're going to arrive at is from the very beginning of what we read, verse 10 and 11, shows us that there is a foundation of marriage that Christ is building through trust. Go back at those verses. Verse 10, an excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. Verse 11, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So, excellent wife equates to a trusting husband. And of course, it works both ways, doesn't it? But what does that mean, excellence, an excellent spouse? Well, that word excellence is speaking of something that is full of substance, and that substance in abundance. So, excellence is used in Scripture about a number of different things. It could pertain to a vast army that marches through the land undefeated. It could pertain to wealth beyond what you could spend. It could pertain to significant, overwhelming strength. It happens and shows up in all of those contexts. But excellence in a husband or excellence in a wife amounts to Christ building a depth of character that has deep roots and abundant fruit. If you're going to be an excellent spouse, that's what that means. It is the work of Christ in you. And that is how the bonds of trust are formed between people. It's when Christ has a hold of them. And He's doing His powerful work in them to make them excellent. Now, we know that even where Christ is present, we've seen that the bonds of trust between a man and woman can be broken. And let's be clear, the bonds of trust are broken by sin and selfishness. Right? We know that's true. When we fail in our marriage, when we fail another person, a spouse or otherwise, it will be because of sin and selfishness. So we are the ones that break trust and ruin marriages. It's not the things going on outside of us or the things happening to us. That's not how marriages are destroyed. Here's the good news. If that's true, then it means the bonds of trust are built by the one who defeats sin and self in us. Isn't that right? The bonds of trust are built by Jesus, His overwhelming power in us. That's what we need, and that's the thing we can trust in the person we love. It's Christ. It's not them and what they're able to do and how well they do it. Right? Trust is not the simple measurement of the amount of good and bad that people have done. That's not what trust is. Now, as I say that, the good and bad that somebody does, that's part of the calculus, right? It does affect you. It does have a powerful influence on you. We all know that that's true. But it boils down to the work of Jesus that is or is not happening in the life of you and that other person. So think about it this way. When you and your spouse are fully surrendered to Christ, He is the rising tide of your relationship. Let me build on that illustration just a little bit more. Because you know I love the ocean and the Bahamas. Think about this. Think about the work you do in marriage, the things you do or don't do as the waves of the ocean. But think about the work that Christ does in your marriage as the tide that goes up and down. Right? So waves are powerful things. Okay? They're constantly crashing on the shore, and they can grow big and dangerous, or they can be big and fun. Either way you want to look at it. But that's kind of what happens with us every day in our marriage, in our relationships. We're doing things, some of them good, I hope, and some of them not so good. But it's like waves that just keep rolling onto the shore. That's what we're doing. But no matter how big waves get, they don't affect the tide. You know that, right? They just kind of go in and out, and they roll through the ocean under the surface. But the waves are the things you see. That's the thing you notice as you look at the water. It's the waves. But the power of the ocean is not always in the waves. And anyone who's been in a hurricane will notice the power of the water is in the tide. That rising sea that when you live further up north, you see it. You know, if you live on Prince Edward Island, Canada, the tide can go up and down 20 feet or so. But if you live further south, the tide is just slow, and sometimes imperceptible, but during the day or evening, whatever the cycle is, it's going up or down. It's happening. That's where the true power of the ocean lies. And so, this is what I want you to think about in your marriage. Because the waves of your daily activity, how you treat one another, yes, that will have an impact. Just like those waves will have an impact on people on the beach. The key is the work of Christ. The key is that when you are surrendered to Christ, when you're acknowledging and living under the wisdom and the power that He provides to you, then that water will rise, and all the boats with it. Your boat of yourself, and the boat of your spouse, and the boat of your children, and the boat of the people around you. That's the work that Christ is able to do. That's what we can trust and what we need to build in our marriages. That's the foundation of it all. So do good things, right? I mean, treat your spouse well. But the reality is it has to be what Christ is doing and how you're surrendered to Him. So see the tide, not just the waves. That's what I want to encourage you to do in your marriage. And when Christ is raising that tide, that's when your identity, who you are and what this marriage really is meant to be and do, that's when that will become more and more clear to you. So Proverbs will continue to show us what the identity of a marriage is. And the thing that I think best points this out in this passage is in verse 17 and verse 25. Verse 17 says, she dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Verse 25 doubles down on that statement. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Now, there's a couple things that really pop out about the idea of somebody, especially a woman, being dressed in strength. And number one, that word strength there is most often used in Proverbs of that which the Lord gives and provides to His people. So, check it out. The same word is used in Proverbs 18:10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. That's that word strength. And the righteous run into it and are safe. Proverbs 14:26. The fear of the Lord, in the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence. So clearly the strength is coming from the Lord. It's not something produced by us, which we know. I don't have to tell you that. But just for the sake of abundant clarity, that's what it is. And I love the idea that the way it's used in Proverbs is strength is clothing. So, first of all, clothing, when you think about that, when I think about that, I think to what it says in the New Testament about how, because of the salvation we have in Jesus Christ, we're able to do what with the old man? Put him off. We're able to take off that bit of nasty clothing. And what are we able to do? Put on the new man. The person that's defined by Christ. We can wear that as our clothing. I love the imagery because think about what clothing does to you. Maybe this is more true for women than for men, but ladies, when you dress up, you really nice to go somewhere, to a wonderful dinner, to an event. For my daughters, it's probably dressing up for a play, right? They love the costumes and the things you get to do for a play because you kind of get absorbed in that character, and you're clothed in that character, and it makes you be able to think and do things a certain way, doesn't it? This afternoon, I'm going to do something I don't do very often. I'm going to wear a suit. And I'm going to look a lot more polished and professional than I normally do. That doesn't mean I am. But it'll make me feel that way, right? But clothing has that impact on you, doesn't it? But here's the beauty of being clothed with Christ, because it's not just a feeling. It's not just a costume that you take on and off for a play. It becomes your very appearance and identity. That new man that you are in Jesus, that new woman that you are in Jesus. And so I love that Christ is your clothing every day. Husbands, wives, all of you, remember this. Christ is your clothing every day. And that clothing is one of unbelievable, heavenly, beyond you kind of strength. So moms, when you didn't get good sleep last night, and you've got a full day ahead of you, and you don't know how you're going to survive, guess what? You can be clothed in the strength of Christ. And when you are at a crossroads in your marriage, and you're struggling with a decision that you have to make, or an issue that's going on between you, and you can't seem to get past it and reach that compromise, guess what? Husbands, husband, wife, you are clothed with the strength and the wisdom of Christ. And it may not feel like that's true, because if that were true, then this wouldn't be happening to us, would it? That's not the way the Lord sees it. No matter how long you're going through that struggle, stay clothed in Christ. He will provide what you need. And men, when you're accomplishing great things at work and you're finishing great projects at home, remember that you're clothed in Christ, because those achievements don't mean anything if you're not finding your identity and your source in Jesus Christ. Because all that you can do, if it's done apart from Christ, as you know, it's nothing. So we have an identity in marriage. We can be clothed in the strength of Christ. Now, as we're talking about this, I do want to give a word to all that the woman in this passage is apparently doing. Because I know that as we read this, it may seem like, wow, she's doing all kinds of stuff that I don't do, and I don't think I ever could. Now, let me just give you some context, ladies and all of you, about all of the different activities that the woman in this passage is doing. Number one, this is obviously the words of wisdom from an aristocratic woman who has loads of resources at her disposal. So men, if you think your wife should be doing all of these things, then like it says in verse 15, make sure she has lots of maidens and resources to do them. But the reality is this whole section of 10 through 31, it's not a checklist that is meant to say, hey spouses, hey women, make sure you're checking off all of these boxes, and once you do, then you are the prize wife. Then you are really doing excellent. It's not what this is. Right? In fact, this whole thing is a Hebrew poem. What we don't see in the English is that it goes through every letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and because it's poetry, that doesn't mean it's not true. What it's doing is it's simply showing us that, look, if you live with Lady Wisdom, look at what she's capable of doing in your life. It's not that you have to check all these things off and go do them. What it's really pointing to is, look at all that wisdom can be done in your life. Look at what Christ is capable of. Well beyond what you may think he is in your life. Whatever your weakness is, that doesn't really matter. Because if you're clothed in Christ, then his strength is really what matters, not your weakness. So that's our identity in marriage. And once we have embraced that identity, then we're really equipped to see the benefit of marriage. Let me explain what I mean by this. So the benefit of marriage, look at verse 23 with me. There's lots of benefits in marriage, of course, but I love the way this verse is phrased. Her husband is known at the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Now, that may look kind of innocuous, but let me explain the setting here a little bit. So at the city gates, to sit there was to be a part of the wisdom and kind of the decision-making of what was happening in that town. To be one that sat at the gates was to be a leader and someone of influence and significance in that town. And apparently in this verse, it's because of the quality and the character of the wife that the husband is so prestigious at the city gates. So it's not really of his own doing, although he may be a man of influence, but it appears that his wife is greatly enhancing his prospects and his place in the entire community. And I love that because when two people see the foundation of Jesus Christ in their marriage and they're clothed in the identity of Christ and surrender to him, that's when the impact on each other's lives will really shine. And it's a beautiful thing. It's something that you really can't miss if you're paying attention to. And it's important to know this because, like me, maybe this is true for you, when I look at the differences between me and my wife in our marriage, I do not always see the value of that. And the reason is because the differences are often the ones that cause the conflict. Right? Her different way of doing things, her different way of thinking about things, her different idea about the decision that needs to be made here. Those are the things that often bring conflict. And so, those are the things that are easiest for me to say, man, I really wish she was more like me and not so much like her. Laugh at me for saying that, but I thought that. I just wish in this area that she just wasn't that way. It'd be really nice if we could just agree and think the same way on that thing. That would save us a lot of trouble, wouldn't it? But the problem is, seeing or thinking that way and seeing differences in a marriage as the problem is really missing the complementary component that God has in mind by bringing a man and a woman together. The reason God has made a different person than you come and be part of your life in that way is not for the sake of irritating you, but for the sake of growing you, for the sake of shaping you. Because as much as I don't want to admit it, as much as I don't see it, my imperfections are very and detrimental to me. And not only do I need the work of Christ in my life to deal with those things, but I need the work of another person in my life, side by side, whoever that may be, but especially when it comes to a spouse, who will be able to model Christ for me in ways that I don't necessarily see or live myself. It's easy to miss that because I want to avoid conflict. I want to avoid the trouble of someone who's different than me. It's just the reality of it. So I remember having a conversation with this guy, a dear friend of mine in ministry. We were serving in ministry together as single guys, and then several years later we were serving together as married guys. And so we had this really interesting and in some ways a very sad conversation one day. We were sitting in this office, we were talking together, and he was kind of lamenting the fact that he was now married and not able to do the things that he and I were able to do in ministry when we were single. Hey, remember when we were able to do that and that? And I would love to do more of those things, but I gotta pay attention to my wife. I've got to deal with things at home, and it just doesn't allow me to have the time that I could have in ministry like I did before. And so he's lamented this, and he's talking about 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul said, hey, you could be focused on ministry when you don't have a wife. And he was taking that as almost a regret to married life in terms of his ministry life. So I thought about that for a second. I was a little surprised that he said it, but then I was kind of saddened by that. And in that moment, I realized something, and it's not something I didn't know, but the power of this truth hit home with me right there in that moment, in that conversation. And that was this. After being married, I had years of being single and in ministry, but after being married, it was somewhat true that I didn't have the quantity of time to give myself to certain things and certain people in ministry. But what I can say unequivocally is true is that while the quantity of my ministry might have been less, I know that the quality of my ministry is far greater. With Alicia in my life, with this woman who fears the Lord, side by side and rubbing off on me and modeling Christ to me, my ministry was far more excellent than it ever was without her. Whatever the quantity was, I would never replace it with the quality of that woman and her example of Jesus Christ to me. There's nothing else like it. And I say that because that's not just true in ministry. Do we understand that that's true in every one of our marriages, no matter what our careers are, and no matter where we are? It's true that the differences in your spouse are meant to enhance your marriage and, in fact, to enhance your life in Christ, not to diminish it. That's what Jesus is doing to shape and guide you. So, a question for you and for me. I'll answer it to you. but I'll just ask it to you. What are the differences in your marriage? And if you're not married, you can just think of another close relationship, but any relationship you don't know with. What are the differences that really bother you about that person? Go ahead, you'll have to think of this. And maybe it comes to you pretty quickly. What are those differences? In fact, what's that one thing that's secretly in your mind that you would never voice to your spouse? And don't do this, don't ever voice it. What's that one thing that you wish, oh, that's the thing I would really change about her or him if I could? What is that? I'm not going to make you answer that, but you've got the answer in your head. Now, I want you to think right now about that thing and what is it that Christ could do to make that thing that you don't like and want to get rid of? What could Christ do to make that grow you and build your marriage and shape you in your relationship with Him? What is it about that person that Christ can use to change it? Because He can. You know He can. You may not want Him to, but you know He can. And in fact, that's what He means to do. That's why He puts you with that person, the spouse, the friend, whoever it is in your life. That's why He put them there. No matter how hard or easy that relationship is. He's shaping you and growing you through their differences and the things that you probably would like to get rid of. That changes the game, doesn't it? But when Christ and what He's doing in marriage amounts to that, it changes the game. And so for my friend, I'll just tell you this. And to his credit, he did come to realize this. But his wife, for whatever she lacked in theological training or anything else, she had a care and a kindness and a warmth about her that he desperately needed in his life. There was a certain amount of arrogance and self-confidence that he had that was detrimental to him in his relationship with Christ and his ministry in every way, and his wife was there to be that example of Jesus. And I saw it right away, and again, Jesus revealed that to him, and I'm thankful for it. But what a powerful thing. What a powerful thing that this kid with incredible theological training and unlimited ability could realize, oh, I'm still weak. Christ is working through my life to make me a man I can never become a man. How awesome is that? That's the benefit of marriage, when Christ is working His way and has His hands all over. But there's finally a blessing in marriage, and I love how this chapter ends here. Let's read just the last 4 verses starting in 28. So this woman of excellence and strength, it says her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. And this is what he says to her and about her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Your excellence exceeds them. It says charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. Let me just stop on that phrase and give you a quick rabbit trail. To be charming and to be physically beautiful, there's nothing wrong with that. This is not demonizing that. So ladies, dress up and look nice. That's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Okay? Being charming is fine. There's danger to it because things that look good on the outside can be rotten to the core, right? That's the reality that this is presenting. Okay, so let's be clear about what that is and is not saying. But here's the heart of it. And I love that Proverbs ends this way because this is how Proverbs started. And it's been the whole focus all along, right here. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. A man who fears the Lord is to be praised. Not because they're great, because the Lord is. We know that. But I want you to think about that statement back in verse 28. Her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also, he praises her with words. You see how we talk to each other about the way you talk to each other in marriage. There's an interesting thing about the people you're really close to and the people you're not. And what I found, it can be true of lots of people. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus about this, but I've seen it happen where people can talk so harshly and dismissively and condescendingly to the person that's closest to them in their life. And yet when they meet strangers and people they don't know, they're glad-handing and they're happy and they're so respectful and kind and nice in everything they say and do around that person. And that's just an odd thing, isn't it? You ever seen that play out? Why would you not be most respectful and loving to the closest person in your life? And yet we tend to flip that. And this is just a little bit of personal speculation. But what I think is happening there when we are inconsistent in the way that we respect and honor other people with our words, whether they're close or far or whoever they are, when that inconsistency is true in our lives, I believe it's this. I believe it's because we're looking to be the kind of people that want to receive someone else's approval and praise, rather than the kind of person that wants to give proper respect and build other people up. You get what I'm saying there? Inconsistency in your life about the way you talk to and about people is pointing something out. And maybe it's not pointing out what I just said. Pay attention, because I'm sure that the Lord wants to deal with you on that. So let's make sure that it starts in our marriage and how we talk to one another. Let that be evident in the life of the person you love the most. But there's not just how we talk to each other. It's how we talk about each other. Have you ever been in that situation where you're around somebody and whether it's their child or their spouse, you're talking really just condescendingly and disparagingly about them? You've been in that situation and felt really uncomfortable? Another guy I know, and again, dear brother, I love him, but he had this joke where he would introduce his wife to people as his old bag. He would literally say these words: "This is my old bag, Candy." I mean, wait, what? What did you just call it? I mean, it was, people would just kind of stop, look around, like, "Is this a joke, or what are you saying?" Or, I mean, it was. I don't know how to describe it. It was just really unsettling. And of course, he's laughing and she's laughing, even because this is this joke they have, in their marriage. He calls her his old bag, and I couldn't help but thinking, oh. Even if you're just joking 100%, that is just so not funny. Right? To talk about your spouse that way, even if you think you're joking, please don't. That's just painful, man. Like, every time he did it, I was around him and he did it so many times, it was just so painful. Because you just feel it, like eroding the trust and the respect of their marriage, even though they think they're joking. Now listen. As I talk about the idea of talking about the people you love with respect, I'm not saying that we just put on a happy face, that we just say things that aren't true, just so people think everything's fine in our marriage and family. Right? I'm not saying put on a smile even when you're miserable. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to say that there is a way to bless your spouse and the people in your life, even when you need to deal with some of the ugly truths in that relationship. Okay? So we do this, we talk about them with the right people and in the right ways. That's how I think we can be honest and genuine about all the good and bad and ugly in our lives and our marriage, but also to do that in a productive and God-honoring way. We do it with the right people in the right ways. We just spend a minute to define what I mean by that. Being honest and saying the ugly truths, even about the person you love, to the right people, probably means you're not talking to your extended family. I've seen that happen. You probably have too, where a couple gets married and then something hurtful happens, and they directly call the brother or the sister or the mom or the dad or something like that. And let me just encourage you that that is probably not the wisest approach. Because as much as your family members may be godly and full of incredible wisdom, the reality is there's no way of getting around the the bias of family. No matter who my kids marry, I'm going to be for them. They're going to be my favorite. That's just the reality. Maybe I'm off on that. Maybe I'm messed up. But I'm guessing most of us are just in the same place. Right? Your own children will be your favorites. So yes, find somebody with incredible godly wisdom and maturity in Christ to go to about the difficult, ugly truths of you and your spouse and your marriage so that you can deal with them. Find the right people. Go to them. But hopefully they're objective and not biased. But here's the other thing. When you find the right people to go to, talk to those people in the right way. You can say what's on your mind. You can say what the truth is, but don't do it to blow off steam. That's not how we talk about other people. Don't do it so that you can kind of subtly prove to others who is doing it better in this marriage. Because let's be honest, that is a motivation that can creep in for all of us. Hey, I just want you to know that I'm flawed, but I'm doing it better in this situation especially. Don't let that be your motivation. That's not the right way to be candid about one another in your marriage to another person. Make sure that the right way involves brutal honesty, but brutal honesty for the sake of pursuing understanding and acting in love. That's always the goal. That's always what's driving us. Even when we're wrong, let every word, especially the hard ones, be that which honors the Lord and directs you toward Him. So yes, say the hard things. Say the true things to your spouse, to your counselor, or to your mentor. But let it always be to grow you and not prove your point. Let it be for the work of Christ to build you, not just so that you can be right on another. So, as we close out here, I just want to finish on those words. The woman, the man who fears the Lord is to be praised. Because that's where this ends. And that's the heartbeat of the whole passage. It's the heartbeat of all of Proverbs. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the person who succumbs to that, the person who bows the knee before an almighty, majestic God, that person is to be praised for their wisdom. So look at this verse in Proverbs 14. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life that one may turn away from the snares of death. Think about that idea, that the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. In every bit of your life, fearing the Lord will allow you to drink from His fountain. That idea, that picture of fountain, is a spring of water. You know what I'm talking about? A spring of water, something that's water that's down in the earth, but for whatever reason the pressure builds it up so that it bubbles up out of the ground. This pure, clean water bubbles up out of the surface for people to use and be refreshed by. So you didn't have to dig the well or go digging for the water. It came right to you. And that's the beauty of the fear of the Lord. When you stand before your God on holy ground in your marriage and in your life, remember the fear of the Lord. Remember that you're face to face with Him. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever that person has done to you, you're standing on holy ground before God. That's where you live. You don't live in a failed marriage. You don't live in a blessed marriage. You live before God on His terms and on holy ground. As you realize that, as you know that, please, every single one of you, drink from that fountain. Drink from the well of Christ. He is refreshing. He is life-giving. He's what you need. So every day, as you go by your business, and whatever it is you're doing, please see the greatness of God. Drink from the well of Christ. That's where you'll find your life. That's where you will build your marriage. That's how you will raise your kids. That's how you will succeed in every single thing that you do every single day. It's Christ in you and His grace to sustain no matter how hard things get. Because Because I know some of you are going through some really hard times right now. And these things may seem like platitudes for you, but they're not unreachable. These things we're sharing today from Proverbs 31 are not for other people. They're for you. And they're delivered to you through the grace of Christ. And so we're going to sing about that this morning. I want you to remember how amazing the grace of Jesus is in whatever you're going on in your life right now. So worship team, come forward. Let's just spend a moment in prayer. Father God, we are so thankful that in our sin, in our rejection of you, in our desperation, that you look down on us with merciful eyes. That you sent your Son Jesus to do for us what we could never hope to do ourselves. And that's to step out and break free from the bondage of sin and to live in glorious connection and union with you, to stand before your throne in fear and awe and wonder and worship. We could never do that, but you made it possible. You made it real. And Lord, I pray for everyone in this room that whatever relationship they're facing right now that's just a deep struggle, especially if it's their marriage, or whatever life issue they're facing that seems overwhelming. God, would you remind them of your amazing grace? Grace that saw fit to rescue sinners. Grace that saw fit to give us what we don't deserve. Grace that makes us able to walk through the curtain and stand free of guilt in the very throne room of God, before the very mercy seat. We have the right to be there because of Jesus. Thank you so much for what you've done. Jesus, thank you for your life that's in us. The words we're about to sing, Lord, just help us to be as genuine as we possibly can. We pray these things in your name.